I'm Marie Horton. I'm the Interim Portfolio Director for Education, Skills and Employment on the island of St Helena. Today I'm going to talk about one aspect of the education review, which is a decision that has been made for our primary school reorganisation. Throughout the education review, we have done lots and lots of stakeholder engagement, and we're really grateful to the many people who've given their time freely and helped us secure this piece of work. Everyone we've spoken to has given us a very clear message that they want education standards to improve. And indeed, our outcome data shows that our education standards do need to improve. We have talked at length about the challenges that we have and the opportunities there are to improve our children's life chances. So I'm not going to go into that into a great deal of detail today. So I want to explain how the primary reorganisation fits into the education review. The education review has four key components. The first component is a very detailed data set which identifies our strengths and our many opportunities to improve. Our second element of the education review is an education standards bid, which is a bid to the FCDO to help us secure our education standards framework, which is the COBIS standards framework. This was a decision to adopt this standards framework was made politically in September 2024, and it is a critical decision, and all of the education review has COBIS standards threaded through all aspects of work. This is one of the biggest changes in education in St Helena, and it is hugely exciting. It gives our schools a clear roadmap of the standards they're going to be working to achieve. And we can achieve these standards. They're the standards that Two Boat School in Ascension Island has met, and if they can do it, so can we. The third part of the education review is the education review report. This report is a public document and it is available on the SHG website. I commend it to you. It identifies our areas of strengths, and it identifies our areas of challenge and what we're going to do to meet those challenges. And the fourth aspect of the education review is the primary reorganisation decision. This is a political decision and it's critically important. We are not going to be able to improve our standards and outcomes with the current education model. That primary reorganisation is supported by a successful bid for capital money to improve our primary schools. That is hugely exciting. So over the next few years we will see our primary schools facilities improve. I'm now going to talk in much greater detail about the primary reorganisation and the evidence and work that we did to make sure this is an evidence-based decision, not based on anything else but fact. So the primary school reorganisation had some really clear goals and objectives. And the clear goal was to make sure that any chosen solution met four key criteria. The first criteria was that any proposal met the education and broader needs of the children. The second one was that it provided stability. Our primary schools have really struggled to offer stability. We have huge challenges with staffing. We do really struggle to get enough trained adults to work in our schools to give the children the stability they need. Clearly, we want to make effective use of resources, and we want to improve inclusion for all of our pupils. Those factors were weighted in terms of importance. So the first highest weighting, which is 30%, was meeting the education and broader needs of the children. You're able to read the slide to see that another 30% weighting was for provision for children with SEND and SEMH additional needs. That stability was weighted at 20%, and that making effective use of resources was also weighted at 20%. And I'm going to look at one aspect in detail, which is how did we determine a score for meeting the education and broader needs of children, because that is the thread that runs through the whole of the education review. We need to meet the needs of all our children as effectively as we can. We looked at 4 key criteria. The first being the pupil qualified teacher ratio, and we were looking at locally qualified teachers, and I've explored the difference between locally qualified teachers and internationally qualified teachers in a previous presentation. Can we develop a school model which supports joint planning and moderation that will help us improve standards and meet the needs of children? Can we develop a model which supports teacher training and in-service development? And finally, can we avoid vertical teaching? The feedback that we had from all parents was that they really don't like vertical teaching. And that's where we've got mixed age groups of children being taught in the same class. We're aware that our teachers find vertical teaching challenging, and when you look at the education review, we explore some of the reasons why. So we started with 4 options in terms of what possible structures could we have. These options came from a working group that we had made up of local staff and other key stakeholders, and we originally started with 4 potential organisational structures. The first one is no change. We could retain our 3 primary schools. The second is we could build a brand new primary school for all the children on the island. That option was discounted at an early stage for 2 key reasons. First of all was time pressure. We need a quick and deliverable solution. Building a new primary school will have a delivery time of 5 to 7 years. With the challenges that we have and our current outcomes, we can't afford to wait 5 to 7 years. And our other big challenge was cost. Building a brand new primary school is going to cost very many millions of pounds, and that funding is not available. Our third option was to close 1 school site and to move the children to 2 existing school sites. And those schools could be mirror schools, so they start with early years and they provide education for up to year 6. So replicating the delivery model that we currently have in our 3 primary schools at Harford, Pilling and St Paul's. And the fourth option that we explored was to close all 3 primary schools and to restructure, to open a school that provides for early years and Key Stage 1, and to open a school that provides Key Stage 2. And those schools would educate all the island's children. Now, we have a very complex Excel spreadsheet which actually gives us a weighting of the options. In terms of the ranking, the option that came third was to retain the 3 existing primary schools. So why did this option come third, i.e. it came last, it had the lowest score? It scored this option, retaining our 3 primary schools, scores very lowly on all the factors relating to quality. It scores highly on not being disruptive. We maintain the status quo, but it scores poorly on securing long-term stability. We will retain the instability that we currently have in our primary school system. The operating costs are high because we will retain high levels of vacancies, and it's unlikely to help us consolidate and improve our SEND infrastructure and the support that we provide to our children with additional needs. It has a staffing requirement of 83, and we need 30 locally qualified teachers, which we are currently unable to recruit. If we look at which option came second, the option that came second was opening 2 mirror schools. It does consolidate resources, but our demographic modelling shows that we are very likely to be having vertical teaching groups within 2 to 3 years. We will still have SEND provision and resources stretched across 2 schools, which will limit our ability to provide the very best we can for our children with additional needs. It's pretty critical that we get our catchment areas right, but we've got some very sophisticated modelling in the GIS system, thanks to colleagues in other parts of SHG, and we felt we could do that work. It would save on transport expenditure compared to our current transport costs, which, as we've explored before, is one of our budget pressures. It's very unlikely to be seen as a new start, a fresh opportunity, and more likely to be seen as an option that gives winners and losers, with the winners being those whose school stay open and the losers being the school that is closed. We do need to make sure that any option that we have has sufficient capacity so that when the population of St Helena increases, we can accommodate all the children on the island. And this option has a staffing requirement of 67 with 25 locally qualified teachers. The option that scored the most highly was to close all 3 primary schools and to open 2 new schools on existing school sites, one as an early years Key Stage 1 school and the other as a Key Stage 2 school. This gives us the best options for driving up quality, and in terms of driving up quality, that gives us the best option in terms of improving children's education outcomes. Our modelling showed that St Paul's must stay open as it's the only school site that has sufficient capacity for Key Stage 2. It does give us the opportunity of a fresh start because all schools are treated the same. A potential issue is transport costs, which could be complex and expensive. But that's partly mitigated by the fact that we would be able to open SEND and inclusion bases related to key stages, which will consolidate expertise and give us the best chance we have of meeting children's needs. And finally, it gives us a staffing requirement of 61 with 18 qualified teachers. So where did we go next? It was clear that retaining the 3 primary schools is not going to enable us to meet the delivery objectives that we have and to make the changes that we need to make to improve education standards and outcomes. Which leaves us with 2 options. One is to open 2 mirror schools, and the other option to close all 3 schools and open an early years and Key Stage 1 school and a Key Stage 2 school. We evaluated those 2 options further, but we needed to do that in a really unbiased and evidence-based way because clearly we need a strong rationale to advise politicians so a political decision can be made. The criteria that we used when looking at school sites was 1, stability, and 2, effective use of resources. And we looked at all school sites against those criteria. So we needed to have an evaluation criteria because obviously any political decision needs to be evidence-based. So in terms of the mirror schools, first of all, looking at Harford on the left-hand side of the column, Harford offers a large green space. It's a large site which could be extended if we have additional pupils. And its courtyard setting is optimised for inclusion. It's a very lovely layout. In terms of Pilling, it also has many strengths. It's convenient for parents who work in Jamestown. It is one of the most beautiful buildings in St Helena. It's a Grade 2 listed building, but that also challenges us in terms of reconfiguration. It doesn't have a green space. There is a risk of rockfall, and it's very hot in the summer. There isn't any room for expansion in terms of a school field or to provide a school hall without taking over the community college and the Education Learning Centre. And parents were very keen to point out their concerns about traffic pollution. Finally, moving to St Paul's, that currently serves the west side of the island well. It's the largest school site, and there is plenty of space for expansion if needed. It has got the largest number of classrooms. It has a green field and a wet play area. Its design means that we can reconfigure the school depending on the pupil profile and class size, but nothing is perfect. St Paul's as an area and Pounces is cold and wet for much of the year, and we would need to address issues in terms of damp and field drainage. We then built on those criteria and looked at their suitability for either being a Key Stage 1 school or a Key Stage 2 school. In terms of Harford, its school layout makes it well suited as a Key Stage 1 school. However, nothing's perfect. Its location could also provide challenges in terms of transport for Key Stage 1 pupils for some of our remoter areas, including Blue Hill. In terms of Pilling, its layout with 2 floors make it less suitable for Key Stage 1 and for pupils with additional needs in terms of SEND and SEMH. It's next to a main road, so that makes it less suitable for EYFS and Key Stage 1. If we then move to St Paul's, its central location makes it ideal for any Key Stage school. But it's near our secondary school, and we are very keen to develop cross-curricular work in terms of primary-secondary transition. And we're keen to enable some of our secondary colleagues to support the higher end of Key Stage 2 in terms of curriculum delivery. And being the largest site makes it the best school for Key Stage 2. We then moved to a weighted appraisal, and what you can see is that the option that came first was to close the Pilling School site, to open St Paul's as a Key Stage 2 school, and to open Harford as a Key Stage 1 school. In terms of offering stability, that gives the island a long-term solution. It maximises environment and access to facilities. It will provide some disruption, and there may be some challenges in terms of travel time. It could be viewed as being acceptable because it offers effective use of resources and should improve educational standards and outcomes. But this is also a sad decision, because we are looking at closing a building that has been used for education for many years in St Helena. It's a highly regarded school, and it has a very special place in the island's culture and for Jamestown. On the balance of evidence, it was led to the conclusion from the portfolio that we should suggest to politicians that Pilling School site should close. It wasn't originally designed as a school, and the configuration of classrooms and playgrounds are suboptimal. There are safety risks in terms of rockfall and pollution and road traffic. Its Grade 2 listed status makes it very challenging to reconfigure. Accessibility is a problem because it's on 2 floors, and that is a challenge for our pupils and can be a challenge for staff. Bringing children into town does provide quite considerable congestion challenges for Jamestown, and if we bus more children into town, the pollution and congestion will get worse. There isn't an outdoor green space, and it's very challenging to consider how we could expand the Pilling site, because we would be needing to close valuable community and portfolio resources, and try as we could not find anywhere to relocate those facilities, nor do we have any funds to fund, any money to fund relocation. So with that evidence base and with our recommendation, a political decision has been made to move to a 2-school model. We will have an early years, so nursery and reception provision, and a key stage 1 school at Harford, and we will have a key stage 2 school at St Paul's. Now, lots of people have asked, when is this going to happen? It will happen in September 2026. So what are the implications of this decision? It's a big decision for the island. It means that all 3 primary schools will close in August 2026. In September 2026, 2 new schools will open with new names, new colours, new logos, new uniforms. We are lucky that we have some buyout funds that we have ring-fenced to support with some of those costs, many of them on a one-off basis. There will be a new staffing structure, and we'll be working to develop that staffing structure. At this point, I would just like to refer to the importance of our local staff. The Education Review is very clear that our local staff are massively important. On page 2 of the report of the Education Review, it says the following. Staff in schools are dedicated and hard-working, with a strong commitment to the education of the children in their care. They are often prepared to work above and beyond by stepping into new roles, including those they are not qualified or trained for. We are hugely grateful and blessed to have so many educators in our local schools that really care for children and give of their best. We need to make sure that we keep our local staff, that the whole community values them. Our primary reorganisation will not work without them. And the key aim of our new staffing structure will be to ensure that over time, our 3 schools, the 2 primary schools and the secondary school, work together to raise pupil outcomes, that we have well-trained and confident staff, that we have high-quality school leadership, and that together we work to secure COBIS. Throughout the Education Review, we have focused on the needs, the educational and broader needs of children and education standards. St Helena now has adopted an education standards framework, the COBIS standards, the education standards for British international schools, and this is where we're going to be putting our efforts to work to achieve these standards. If you're a bit unsure what an education standards framework is, this will be our Ofsted. This is our Bible. Please take the time to look on the internet, to download it. You will see that we have 9 key standards to work to meet, which include such areas as recruitment, governance, ethos and values, leadership, teaching and learning. But it really is worth your time taking a look at the standards framework. Over time, our primary reorganisation will impact education standards, and they should improve. Why am I confident that education standards will improve? Each primary school will have a narrower focus. They will be focusing on a single key stage. We should, with a reduced need for staffing, be able to have secure and stable staffing. Again, I cannot reinforce the importance of our local staff. This delivery model will make vertical teaching much less likely, and that is a very unpopular delivery model for parents and staff. Each school will have very specific measurable outcomes. We can make sure that the resources are age specific, that the training that we secure will be focused on key areas of development, and finally, and really importantly, we're going to be able to develop age-appropriate inclusion provision for our vulnerable children with SEND and SEMH. We will be working relentlessly to secure COBE standards, and that's a really exciting opportunity. We will need additional funding, and we will need really active support from the whole island and saints that don't live on the island at the moment. So we're going to need support from other portfolios, from politicians and the whole community. We're now going to move on to talk about facilities. How will the primary reorganisation impact our school facilities? All our primary schools have had condition surveys identifying areas that can be improved. Over time, we will see the two primary schools' facilities improve to meet Standard 3, which is the facility standard for COBIS. We've got play and sports facilities that can be developed. Both sites have got generous green fields, and both sites can expand when our children's numbers increase. So we will see a gradual investment in both of the school sites of approximately up to £3 million, which is a very significant sum of money and a massively exciting opportunity. And we need to make sure that we spend this money well, cautiously and wisely. I'm now going to move on to talk about timeline. So we always said that the primary school reorganisation would happen in September 2025. And I've been quite clear that we're going to reorganise the primary schools in September 2026. So I want to explain why we've changed the timeline. There is a lot of work to do in terms of reorganising our primary schools, and we want to make sure this work is done well and that there is a smooth transition. We have got key groups of people to consider. At the centre of this is we have our pupils, our school staff and our parents. We want to make sure that this reorganisation improves standards and outcomes. We also know that Harford, Pilling and St Paul's all have a special place in their communities. They have made a huge impact on the island and on many people's lives. We want to have a year where we honour that impact, we pay tribute to the great difference they've made to the island and look forward to a new and exciting school delivery model. We also need to recruit quite a lot of expertise, both in terms of school and special needs leadership. And we need to make sure that we have the right capacity, sufficient capacity in our schools. And we're working actively on that. In terms of our pupils, we need to make sure that their educational needs are met. This is an exciting opportunity, but change does bring worries. We need to reassure our pupils and we need to listen to their concerns. Transport is going to be a really big piece of work, and we'll be working closely with our transport transport experts looking from scratch at the transport routes that we currently use and new transport routes that we're going to be developing. We need to make sure that we've got transition support in place, and we need to get the 2 school sites ready. We then move on to our key relationships with our parents and carers. We want to listen to your concerns, we want to hear your questions, and we need close working relationships with our PTAs so that you feel confident if you tell us your worries and concerns that we will go away and we will act upon the things that worry you and provide some reassurance and some answers. So regular communication and updates are vital, and that is going to be a pivotal relationship going forward. I'm now going to move on to our staff, and I've already paid tribute to our local staff. We need to make sure that we listen to their worries and their concerns. Our 3 primary heads and the Assistant Director of Schools will be working with HR to map our existing staff into a new school structure. And we're anticipating that we'll be ready with this work after the school Easter holidays. And after that work is done, we will be launching a consultation process in line with SHG guidelines. And again, I'd like to pay tribute to our local staff. We need them to be on this journey with us. And finally, we do have a very clear map for improvement in St Helena. Our primary reorganisation is a part of that, but a really key part is our move to secure accreditation for COBIS by meeting the education standards framework. And that is massively exciting. When we get there, we will be able to have a measure of confidence that we can support our children's needs, that our education outcomes will improve, and that our school system will be supporting the delivery of SHG's economic objectives. We also have the small piece of work of securing new educational ordinance, which is an easy sentence to say and a very considerable piece of work which we're needing to do with key stakeholders, including the AG chambers. How can the community be confident these changes are going to happen? There's a number of reasons you can be confident these changes will happen. COBIS standards were approved in September 2024. We've changed the portfolio's KPIs. We've worked very closely with parts of SHG, with lots of stakeholders, and one area we've worked with is the FCDO. All of our elected members have had regular briefings on the education review. Staff in our schools have had briefings at least every 6 weeks. Both the government, SHG, the FCDO locally and in London are interested in improving education outcomes and standards on the island. We have an allocation of up to £3 million for capital improvements in our primary schools. We are going to be establishing a programme board by April 2025, and that will report directly to the steering committee, and EXCO. And finally, we will be working to make sure that the voice of our pupils, our staff, and our parents and the community are vital in supporting this improvement journey as they have been to date. And I would like to end by talking about what the island's children needs. We can see that the government are listening. Children are now identified in strategic priorities in EXCO papers and policy development. We're working to make sure that education needs are met in adequate education provision. We're working to provide high quality teaching every day. But the community can support us by ensuring that St Helena is a highly literate environment with signage and lots of displays and things to read. It's pivotal in helping our children meet their potential. Children need to be supported to play. They need to be encouraged and supported to talk. They need to be actively listened to, and we need a queue of children at the library regularly. Children must read. Children also need exposure to the world of work. That means different things at different times, but we need our employers to continually help us with work experience. And some children don't get it right first time, and if we're frank, neither did we. So exposure to the world of work is really important in raising aspirations. And finally, by working together, the whole community, the Education, Skills and Employment Portfolio, SHG and the FCDO, we can change the future for the benefit of our children. And that's the message I'd like to leave you with, a message of hopefulness. We have been honest about the challenges that we have. We've been very clear about our roadmap for improvement. I hope you have the confidence that we'll deliver that roadmap together and that the children will become the central focus for the whole island. Thank you for listening.